like great thing, and I hope that you all just can appreciate the work that's gone into so many of the decisions that have gotten us this far. So the format of tonight's meeting is sort of going to be our architects are going to show you some of the great renderings of the interior of the building. We're going to ask that you listen to some project updates and scheduling and some construction management planning, and then the superintendent will speak a little bit about the swing space, and then we're just going to open it up for questions and answers and discussions, because it's really important that we keep listening and we keep changing and modifying and making this plan better and better. And I've said that all along, that the community input in this plan has without a doubt made this school better. I mean, every comment that people have made, our design team has listened to and incorporated it to the best of their ability. And I'm just proud of the whole team. And so I'm excited to introduce and reintroduce them to you. Just to give a shout out, we have Rebecca Brown. She's the GPI. She's from GPI. She's our traffic engineer. David Harris and Lee Sherwood are both from LBA. They are our super design team, architects. And I saw Dave Conway here is from Niche Engineering. He's our civil engineer on the project. And finally, I want to introduce Andy Vo, right in front of me, and Mike Conley. They are joining us for this segment of the project. They are our go-to people. Mike was specifically hired to look out for Swampscott's best interests. He's working with us. He's on our team to make sure our design team, our contractors, our consultants, our subcontractors, and the school building committee all sort of stay true to our mission, the project charter we set out at the beginning of this project, and also that, we're on budget and on time, Mike. And so with that, I think I want to turn it over to Lee, right? Because you have stuff to show off that's awesome.
Hi, can you hear me? Is this a good distance? Okay, thank you. It's a big room. So, it's been a little over 2 years since we first got together, and some of you were in a room, maybe in the library and a couple other places, where we actually met in person. And the first thing we actually did was put up a bunch of pieces of paper and ask people what was important to them. We always say that every town or every place is different. These are the things, in the end, that we found were the pillars for Swampscott of what was important to you. And don't be surprised that site and traffic was one of them, because if you look at the bubble over there, that was one of the largest bubbles. Education was a huge concern for everyone here, especially with 3 elementary schools being thought about. Site and traffic, the location in town, lots of time looking at and analyzing different sites. Sustainability, you have a green kind of community. And that's not just the environment, environmental concerns, but also energy. There seems to be a lot of engineers here and a lot of people with, probably with PhDs or something, who really care about energy and usage and all that, but also because of money. Because if we do a sustainable building and site, we save a lot of money in the future. And lastly, community. The idea of bringing the school community together, but also whatever site and whatever building we do, that it can be used. For example, here's this auditorium. This is used by the community, and I'm sure that when the architect and everyone built this, that's what they were talking about, being able to use this together. So it really has come a long way. Those of you who have been watching this from the beginning know that we went through many, many sites and plans. And this is actually the project that is moving forward. And just to orient you, if you look at the very top, you see Whitman Road. And that is actually still the site entry to the school. And the elementary school was placed to the back along Ewing Woods to be as far away from other residences as possible. And also for sustainability reasons, it's kind of next to the woods and has more open space that way. And all the classrooms are oriented to the south and to the north, which is a huge deal when you build a school like this. You can imagine that we used every piece of land for play fields and playgrounds. Not only do we have community play field and playgrounds up front, and that is a substantial playground, and it's modern and safe, we actually are building play areas and meeting spaces all around the edge of the school so that the children can come right out and play there as well. So we're really trying to utilize as much as we can. There are people throughout the process who have asked about snow removal, about service, about emergency access, and we've met with the fire, we've met with the emergency people and everything like that to try to put everything that we've heard into this plan and to make it work the very best that it can work in this site. How do you make something start to feel like a place? Swampscott has, well, you're on the ocean, and you also have the forests and you know, I really didn't know this when we first came here, but you have the forest and the wetlands and the kind of and the rocky areas, and these are all things that are all about Swampscott. But then when you really think about downtown, if you look at, that's actually the library right there, and then the idea of wood and water. After listening to people and really kind of going back and forth, water seemed to be the central theme as to something that we could use. You are Big Blue, by the way, and I hear Big Blue all the time. That's not just a rah-rah thing, right? That's actually who you are. It's all about water. And so when we show you the outside and the inside of the building, especially on the inside, you're going to start to see that water through tile and colors flows through the building as kind of a way for the kids and the people who live there to kind of feel like they're part of that. And the other things that you may remember is that we actually have two entries. This building is a K through 2, which is called the lower school right now, and a 3 and 4, an upper school. And that was a really important step that we took with Pam and others in town in order to take the populations of those students and those teachers and give them their own school. When you look at the building right here, the center of the school is the library and the cafetorium and the gymnasium and all those shared spaces. And then the two schools are to either side. Each has their own entrance, each has their own administration, and then they share some of the bigger spaces. That way we can break it down all along. So when you see the blue in the middle, that big window in the center, that's actually the library. And when you drive onto the site and you look down that first street, that's what you see at the end of the street is that library bringing you in. Even though there's a distance, you know that that's a special place of the school. And then when you go to the right, it'll be kind of a yellow and golden sun like the beach. And to the left is kind of the green and the forest for the upper school kids. You get the idea. Through the magic of computers, we're actually able to design these buildings and then walk around and show it to you. Maybe at another time we could hit a button and you can kind of just, you know, walk right through it. And this is very, very close to what it would be like in real life. As you can see, while it's a 3-story building, the building is set up to step. There's a 2-story wing in the front for the library, which is very reasonable. And then on the sides, you're going to see where the students are, that there's 1-story pieces and then the 2 stories. So things step and they fall back. And there's also different materials. There's brick, and then there's kind of a granite-like base. And then there's this wood, kind of like a teak wood, which is a kind of impregnated wood that is very durable and doesn't need to be maintained. And we wanted to bring that through because of the nautical images of, say, walking on the docks and the boats and things like that. And it also, because this is an elementary school, kind of makes things warm and friendly and welcoming. So we have 2 entries. Oops. We have 2 entries, and here's an example of one of the entries to the lower school. If the color comes out, the children see the color and they identify that with their school. So they go to that spot. And we actually have canopies out front with wood underneath that Kids can sit under in the rain and wait for people, and it's very welcoming. But now I'm going to give you a little bit of a tour. Like I said, we can do this now. If you went inside that door, you have a vestibule. This is not just a little vestibule, this is like a room. And nothing is more important nowadays, especially in elementary school, than safety. So a vestibule like this, the person at that window to the administration buzzes you in after looking at you, visibly. And then you're able to come into here and either wait or check in and keep going. During the morning and the afternoon, the kids can just flow right through there. So that's the security. Excuse me, I haven't spoken in front of so many people for a long time. And when you walk in, the idea is for this school to be intuitive for navigation, to be colorful but not crazy, right? To have natural materials. When we speak to people in Swampscott, there's a lot of talk about wood and stone and slate and tree. You know what I mean? It's very natural. If you look at the walls, you start to see the idea of the tile wainscot, which is very durable, but also it's the water, and you start to see kind of the idea of the blues in there. There are places for the children to sit underneath the stairs. There's a stair on either side for each school that reaches up 3 stories and there's a big Oculus skylight over each that brings the light down and shares it. And then you can see things like that blue area off to the side. That's actually one of the entries to the auditorium. So in an elementary school, they don't have a raked auditorium like this. They'll have what you would call a cafetorium. And the important thing about a space like this is that it can be used for eating, but it can also be used for performances, a science fair, anything in the whole community. And if you look out the side, this is one place where we showed the windows. It's about 1.5 stories. That looks right out into Ewing Woods. The idea is that the woods are the inside and the outside, and that is really, we're engaging it without going into it. And the children will use the woods, obviously, for their learning and for science, but that was very important to us. Most of the common spaces in the center between the 2 schools are places where you might enter into something like a library or media center, but they'll have display and they'll have little places to sit. This is the media center. When you walk in, there's actually 2 stories to the media center. One of them has the lower school and one for the upper school. And I just want to say that all of these kinds of decisions came out of hundreds of hours of speaking with the faculty of all 3 schools and understanding the needs and how they're going to teach into the future. And then there's a kind of another room in the library which opens up. Remember that big window? This is half of it because it goes up the next level and opens up, and there's like a story time area, and that's really the place of learning and interaction. When you go up to any of the next levels, there's areas around the stairs for more display and something we call visual learning or visual display, which is the idea that you can look into one of the classrooms and see the kids creating stuff, especially if they're in a grade older than you and you say, I want to be like them, your older brother or sister. And there's still that whole connection. And if you look in the back, you see kind of a gateway that's green. Say that's on the forest side for the upper school. So if you go into there, you're in that world where the tile is blue, and there's a round area that's green, and then the sky of the cloud above. The idea here for each of these wings is that each wing is a grade. And then each grade is broken down into 2 of these little pods or these little areas. And that's to get, say, 4 classrooms, 1, 2, say 3, 4, to have a flex space and a place where they gather as a community. And so this is a collaborative area. It's a place where the kids can learn and do different things. And remember, these are small children, so you really do want to be able to see them. You might notice that the glass is up higher. The teachers can see through, but the kids are safe and they're not distracted. So we think about a lot of things like that. all of these classrooms meet the kind of program sizes that, frankly, the existing elementary schools do not. If you ask any teacher what they want in a classroom, they'll say flexibility and a couple sinks. So every one of these classrooms has a couple sinks, and not just before hand washing because of COVID, but because that's the right thing to do. But they're big enough so they can be flexible. So the kids come in, they have their own kind of vestibule area and all of that, but then all of the furnishings, and it may not look exactly like that, those furnishings, they might be nicer than that. They're all flexible and movable so they can create any kind of groupings and any kind of collaboration or programs that they want to create. And you might also notice that on the window wall, there's kind of a long bench, a place for the kids to sit, and also a light shelf above that which creates scale but also bounces the light off of it and into the room. That's a sustainable thing for daylighting and trying to use less electricity. If I go up to the third floor, believe it or not, in order to make a building that took up the least amount of space on the site, we put the cafetorium on the first level and the second, and the gymnasium's on top of that, kind of hidden behind the stepping. So when you go to the third floor, we actually put the gymnasium up there. And that's really interesting because that means that everything you do, say you're coming on the weekend and you want to go play pickleball. I'm sure that isn't that the big thing now? I don't know how it works. But everybody, you can come and that whole center of the building is yours. And you come up the stairs or the elevator, and this is the kind of community space that you have, plenty of places to sit. It's like a little community center in the sky, really. And then I wanted to end on this because this is the gymnasium above. This is a large gymnasium for an elementary school because it wanted to have enough sections for all the kids at different times because there are screens that come down. But also, from the very beginning, the idea was to put a high school sized basketball court in there for the community, for recreation, for everybody in town. It's a real space, and we can imagine this space being used as much or more than any other space for the community inside this building. And that's what I wanted to say. I hope that was a nice tour. That's the end of my part anyway. Thank you. Now for the fun stuff.
Thanks, Lee. I appreciate that. So while Lee was able to give us hopefully a real sense of the building and what we're going to be looking at, he has all the colorful and the creative items. I'm going to be talking a little bit more about the dollars and the cents and the schedule and how are we going to manage the project and how are we going to minimize the impact for everybody else. So hopefully that's a part I know a lot of people are interested in, and that's why we're going to be talking a little bit about that tonight. So before we get into the details, we just want to make sure that everybody is aware of, we're having a community forum tonight, but there's many different ways that we want to get the information out to everybody. So we have the website and that link, that HTTPS, you can go there and you can get links to all the information. We're going to be having an email sign up, so the town will be able to regularly send out emails on a regular basis, say once a month or once every 2 weeks. But also if there's something big coming up, like maybe a groundbreaking ceremony or a topping off ceremony, and we want to get the community out there, we'll be able to share that. So you'll be able to sign up and get those emails from that. In addition, we're going to have future meetings just like this, future community meetings. But this one's working. All right. Hands with me. Maybe if I talk, hold it.
Often when you hold it, you want to make sure you hold it right here so you don't block it.
Okay, so we're going to have future meetings as well. Some of those meetings might be larger meetings like this. We may also have meetings specifically for butters or for students and staff and for teachers and for parents. So we're going to be trying to get as much information out and be as transparent as possible. But in addition to those, my name is Mike Carroll. I work for Hill International. Andy Vo and I are going to be your main contacts for Hill International. We're the owner's project manager. So our job here is to represent the school district in all matters, basically. We're there to make sure that Pam's educational program gets developed. We're there to make sure that we're working towards permitting, and we're working towards community involvement. We're also there to make sure that the contractor is brought on board and that we're on budget and we're on time and on schedule. We're going to be working on swing space, which we'll be talking about in a little bit. We're going to be working on getting furniture in and technology and everything. So we're kind of a one-stop shop here. We delegate out little parts and pieces as we go along, but we're here to do that. And if you ever have any questions that you can't find on the website, and it's not in the email, and you haven't seen it anywhere else, that's my email address. Please use it, don't abuse it, but please use it. Please feel free to reach out to me, and we will make sure we get back to you in a timely manner. So one of the things we wanted to talk about here is where are we in the project right now, and what are we going to be expecting in the near future. So right now, we've actually hit a pretty major milestone this evening. We finished what we call the design development documents. And what that is that's a package that we have to submit to the MSBA. That's the Mass School Building Authority. For everybody here, you probably know this, but the state, through the MSBA, provides funding for us, and they're providing a large portion of the funding to help build this school. And because of that, there's steps and processes that we have to follow. One of those is getting these submittals into them, letting them make sure that we're on target, we're on budget, and that they have it's a second set of checks and balances so that they can review that. So we're actually submitting that to the MSBA tomorrow, and that's a major milestone to finish the design development and move into the construction document phase of the project. So we're going to be getting into that, and what that's going to do, that's allowing us to get into Conservation Commission meetings starting here in March. We're going to have the Select Board meeting in April, and we're going to be doing the earthwork approval process there, because we are going to have a reasonable amount of materials coming off the site and coming onto the site. So again, there's a process there, there's a permit there to make sure that we're minimizing the impact to the neighborhood while being able to still complete the project. In addition, we're going to be starting the site work. We're going to see site work and demolition of the Stanley School starting this summer. Pretty much as the kids are getting out, we're going to have to be working on moving furniture and equipment and things like that out, but right after that, we're going to be getting into the meat of the project, the meat of that, which is taking down the old Stanley School. Before we take it down, we are going to be looking at salvaging items and making sure that we have some of the history so we don't lose that history, but we're going to be working on that with Stanley, and then we're going to be starting some of the earthwork. That earthwork will be utility capping from the existing building. It'll be getting prepped for other things, for the building work to be starting in the fall. But part of that prep work is going to be ledge removal. And I'll be talking about that just in a little bit. I know that's a big concern for everybody. So that's one of the things we're going to be talking about. So the site work and the demolition should go through the summer and then into the fall. And early fall, mid-fall, we'll be getting going with the concrete foundations and the steel, and you're going to see that building going up. Once we get that up and we get the building enclosed, then a lot of the noisier stuff kind of goes away, but we're going to be working, for quite a while from that point on. We have about another 16 months or so to get the building complete. We're looking to try and finish the building for the spring, early summer of 2024, so that when we have the school opening in the fall of 24. So that finishing up at the beginning of the summer allows us to get the furniture in, allows us to get the staff in and get everybody oriented in the new building so that we're ready to go and teach on opening day. So specific to the project, we just wanted to talk a little bit, and I'm guessing that many of you sitting here in the audience tonight might see your house up here on the screen right now. I know it's an important item not only for the entire town, but specifically to the butters, and a lot of you are going to have questions tonight about how is this going to affect me. So hoping we can maybe address some of those right now, but we're going to have a nice Q&A session at the end. We'll make sure we get all the questions answered. But what we do want to show here is that the existing Stanley School is basically right in this area here, and I'll be talking a little bit. The north, Page North is basically north. So the Stanley School is on the east side of the site. The new school is going to be basically going on the southern side of the site. Lee mentioned that earlier. It's going to be right up against Ewing Woods, and it's really about as far away from most of the neighbors as we can. And that was a benefit of the location, but the other benefits are the sustainability and getting it near the woods and things of that nature. So there was a lot of things that went into that selection, but fortunately all those kind of came together and worked well with each other. So as we do that, we're going to be talking a little bit about that. The red line here is pretty much the perimeter of the property line, if you will. And so that's, what we're going to be looking at here a little bit. Looking at that now, that red line that we just saw is, again, this same red line that you have here around the site. And when the contractor first gets on and starts their work, there's very many things they have to do before they can actually do the work. We have to secure the site with a fence, so that's going to make sure that we don't have people coming into an unsafe area or an area off hours, things of that nature. We're going to have erosion control. So we're going to make sure that we don't have any stormwater running out of the site or running into the neighbors' properties. That's a key milestone before they can do any work, even cutting trees or anything like that. We want to have that erosion control in place. That's part of the stormwater mitigation. There may be other parts there. We may have to do temporary settlement ponds, things of that nature, and we're going to be continuing to develop that. I mentioned a few minutes ago that we're in the design development phase. We're continuing to do the design. So meetings like this, getting input from you will help further this design. And so it's important for us to understand any concerns that you have, but we're going to be continuing to work on this design, so we don't have the final of everything yet, but we're working towards that, and we're getting everything on the list of what we need to address. So stormwater mitigation is an important one. Another one is dust control, and dust control can be dust in the air. When the demolition's happening, it might be putting fire hoses on the building so the dust doesn't come out, but it's also a wheel wash, which is like a stone runoff area at the entrance, so that when the trucks are leaving the site, they're not tracking dirt and mud out onto the street. Now, it is inevitable that some dirt and some mud might come out there, so that we'll be requiring street sweepers, and we'll be requiring maintenance outside of the site. So we're going to be working inside the site, which is, again, that red line, working around that. But we do touch the community, we do touch the town, and we're going to be making sure that we're good neighbors. That's a key here. We want to be good neighbors. To that end, rodent control. We don't think that there's a rodent issue out there. Typically, the schools have rodent policies anyway. Whenever you're demoing a larger building, it can do things. When you're working on the ground, there can be rodents. So again, we're going to have a rodent control subcontractor, an expert in the field, on site. Again, before we start doing any of this, we're going to be getting everything set up, and we're going to be ready to go. Off-site work, Whitman Road, we're going to be doing some work up there. We're going to be doing some improvements there. There's going to be utility connections and things of that nature. On the Forest Ave extension, we're going to be connecting in there. And then there are going to be some other areas off-site where we are going to be doing some improvements, whether it's handicap accessibility for sidewalks or intersection improvements. So we are going to be doing work off-site as well, but we're trying to focus here a little bit on the on-site. The other thing that's important to understand is hours of operation. 7 to 6 is the typical window that we do. Most of the contractors are looking for 7 to 3. They're not typically working afterwards. There may be an odd time where they're working a little bit longer. If they're looking to work anything past that, they've got to get permission before they do that. So, and Sundays are non-work days. Again, they have to ask for special permission if they were going to do anything like that. So 7 to 6 is your typical, but it's probably closer to 7 to 3, 7 to 4 is what you would typically see on a day. Specific to how is it going to affect you, we're going to be working on traffic routes. When we get the earthwork removal permit, the town is going to probably put us some restrictions on that of which roads we can take and which roads we can't, and we're going to be continuing to develop that into our plan. So as we go through that over the next 2 months and we get that input, we're going to feed that into our documents, and we're going to make sure that, again, that we're trying to be conscientious of that and that we're not going down small roads with big trucks. We're also going to make sure that we don't have contractors parking in the neighborhoods. We want to make sure that they have to park on-site or they have to provide alternate transportation, but we're not going to be parking in neighborhoods. We're also going to be making sure that they're not showing up at 6 o'clock and waiting at the gate. So we're working towards making sure that we have a complete plan here and that we're taking everybody into consideration when we're doing that. Finally, as we said, as we get closer, as we're getting into the work and as we're getting things going, we'll definitely be having more meetings and again, getting community feedback as we move forward. And if there's something that isn't working and we have to make an adjustment, we can do that. Again, we're going to be taking active participation from the community on that. Just getting back to the site here a little bit, just orienting us again. Now we're going to talk about the summer work. So I mentioned a little bit earlier, this summer we're going to be starting demolition of the Stanley building. So there's going to be some abatement in there. The building's an older building. There might be lead paint. There might be other things like that. So we're going to be doing some abatement and then the demolition. And then we're going to be starting the earthwork. So what we're trying to do is get that earthwork ready so that in the fall, when we're starting to do the foundations, we're ready to go. We kind of get the prep work done ahead of time. As part of that, we do have the Stanley School demolition on this side, but we also have other areas that we focus in on. We've got a water retention or an infiltration system for the drainage in this location, and then we have corners of the buildings here, and we've identified that there's potentially some ledge that's at an elevation that we're going to have to take it down from the existing elevation. So we highlighted those 4 areas. Those boxes are probably a lot bigger than the ledge that we're actually talking about taking down, but those are the areas that were identified. We've done some test pits on that, and I think we're actually going to be scheduling a few more test pits in the near future, trying to really kind of zone in on that and make sure we have that understanding. But those are the areas that we're looking at ledge removal, and that removal can be blasting, and I know that's a word that everybody's scared of. I'm going to hopefully show some photos here and a video in a minute to let people see what it is, because a lot of people, when I talk to them about blasting, think about the movies, or they think about Wile E. Coyote with the dynamite and, blasting and rocks flying everywhere and everything, and that's just not what we have here. We're doing a very controlled, small, specific blasting pattern. They do a grid, 5-foot by 5-foot grid. They might do 8 holes to start, and then they can go up to 16 or 24, and it's really small, controlled blasts. And let me just skip through. So what I'd like to show you is this is your site here. So this is that same drawing, same overhead. The one that I just showed you is this one right here on the right. On the left. On the right is a school in Braintree that my company is also the owner's project manager on, and I happen to live in the town, and my daughter goes to this school. So we're actually doing blasting there. We started about 10 days ago. It's a very similar size school to this, and this school here, this is the existing school. The new school is going to be going out in the back, and the photos I'm going to show you in a second are basically right in this red area, actually right up in this area. The blasting's happening with the kids in the school every day. And they have a horn that goes off typically 5 minutes before the blast happens. A horn sounds like an air horn. And then 1 minute before it goes, my daughter told me yesterday that was the first time she heard the horn in 10 days of blasting. And the horn, I will tell you, is the loudest thing that you'll hear. So with that said, let me just show you. So this is actually work that was going on out there. So the gentleman that's doing this, we've actually asked him to take a look at our documents, and he's given us some heads up and some pointers, and we're working with him. He does blasting all over. He's actually done some blasting here in the quarries, and he's done blasting in Swampscott, so he knows the area, and he's been very valuable to us. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to help us tonight by being here, but he gave us some good information. So this is the drill rig. So what they typically do is they drill a set of drill holes, and they drill them down, and then they load those holes with the blasting material. And after they do that holes, if I zoomed in here, you'd see all the little holes that are right underneath this gentleman's feet. And this is what we call a blasting mat. So that mat is basically old tires that are all tied together. And we put that blasting mat over the top of the blasting area. And we don't put one mat. We put a series of mats over the area. So if you kind of look at how tall he is, that mat might be 20 feet long. And we've got a pile there. So it's not a very large area. We're not blasting an acre of area here. It's a very small, very controlled blasting area. And then after we blast, we come in with an excavator, and he's removing the rock that's blasted there. You can see this area here, and you might be able to see these little red dots. I know they're kind of small on the screen here, but that's them setting up the next blast. So they kind of methodically move through the site. While they're doing that, they have seismographs typically positioned at the property lines, and there's regulations to make sure that they don't exceed decibel levels and to make sure that they don't exceed vibration levels. To that end, people always say, well, how loud is it? I'm going to show you in a video in a second, but a thunderclap is about 120 decibels, and that's typically what you're going to have at the blast site. Now, as you go out further and further, it gets quieter much quicker. Like I said, the students in that school that's only about 500 feet away don't typically hear the horn. They do feel the blast, they do feel the vibration. There's vibration, but it's at a safe level, it's at a manageable level. You feel it in your body, you might feel it, but it's not damaging anything. So we've got the blasting set up there, and then this is that area here. So that area of the mats, that's the area right there. And I'm going to play the video here. Just so you can kind of get a sense. So as you can see there, the mats take a lot of the force that comes up out of the ground. You could hear the gentleman, he was standing about 30 feet away from the person filming. His voice was actually a little bit louder than the blast, really. So not saying it's nothing. You are going to feel vibrations. I'm sure people that live on the quarry side of town probably feel those every day. This is not that. The quarry is drilling hundreds of feet or dozens of feet. We're going down 3 or 4 feet. We have a couple of areas that's a little bit deeper than that, but this is very small control blasts, and it's maintained to make sure that we again minimize the impact to the neighbors and everything like that. So I hope that maybe makes people feel a little bit better. I'm sure that there's going to be questions. We're happy to answer them, but before we do that, I'm going to go to our last section here, which is the swing space. I'm going to turn that over.
I have to say, I got an education with that video, and it never gets old watching it. So that was the technical. I'm the educator, and so I'm going to tell you a story. One of the things that I wanted to let the community know is that I was really hoping for a positive vote, as were many in this town, in October. So in anticipation of that, discussions of potential swing space started just about a year ago in March. And we literally spent 10 months. Our first conversation with the YMCA for the Blaney Street property was last May. And so this is something we were thinking about for a long time. 2 major priorities for me, which I mentioned in phone calls to people and conversations, was to keep as much of the Stanley School community and family together, the teachers, the students, their siblings. That was a priority. And the second priority was classrooms. The learning environment was important to us. I don't want to put them in trailers. I taught in the Clark School trailers in 1997. They're still there. They were supposed to be there for 5 years. And so it was really important that we had the most typical environment that we could possibly have for our students. Thrilled with the October vote, but then conversations started with the other principals and at the other schools, because this transition for 2 years is not just affecting Stanley School students and families, it's going to affect Clark and Hadley. Because we're building programs and because we have services in the hallways, we need more space. And so the decision was made probably in late fall after the vote that the principals should anticipate art, music, and library being pushed into the classrooms. They're not going to have those spaces. We need to utilize those spaces for other purposes. And so that commitment was made in the fall, and planning has started on that. All the available spaces were needed, and some classroom locations may be changed. One of the things that bothers me personally is that we have kindergartens in the basement at Hadley that typically flood because of the water table. And so this is an opportunity for us to really change some things around. And so I don't like the expression, but I feel like it's very appropriate that everybody's going to feel a little bit of pain. And in talking with my principals today, I said, I know it's going to be awful for 2 years, but there's a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, and we all have to keep that in sight. And then we started touring as the conversations progressed. We ended up touring just to see what the Blaney site looked like. Probably late fall was the first visit I got. And what we wanted to figure out at our initial visit is what, in reality, how much of Stanley School could actually fit in this building. So there are 9 classroom spaces. There are actually 10, but one is used as church offices, and the agreement is that they would not move. So that gives us 9 classroom spaces. We would also need a principal, an administrative assistant, a nurse, an adjustment counselor, a teacher's lounge and workspace, particularly if we're pushing in those specials. Those teachers are going to have to leave their classrooms, and it's really important that they have a workspace and a space to eat lunch and things like that. In addition to that, we need speech services. There are a few that I missed. But so with 9 classroom spaces and a few offices as compared to our current elementary schools, how are we going to do that? So the decision was made and revealed last week, I'm happy to report, that we would do Stanley grades 1 through 4, as Suzanne said, that's 8 classrooms, and then we would keep our Discovery Learning program in the 9th classroom there. We would move 2 kindergartens to Hadley, keeping the 2 Stanley teachers, kindergarten teachers together, and also keeping the students together, because when they transition to 1st grade, I want those students to be able to transition with their siblings that are in Blaney. And so it's important to us in speaking with the Hadley principal today and the Stanley principal, well, the Hadley principal specifically, and Mrs. Raymond, when those kindergarten class lists are made, they will be 5 kindergartens, but 2 of them will be made up of Stanley students. And the thought of 5 kindergarten teachers being able to collaborate together prior to consolidating completely is a great opportunity. A look ahead. I'm here to tell you tonight, we do not have all the answers, but I'm excited that we have the opportunity to come up with them together. So student and family impact, we're thinking about start times for the elementary, Hadley, middle school, and we're thinking about the middle school because we're going to be talking about busing for 2 miles or more. And the plan for when this new school opens is that we utilize the middle school bus to also transport our youngest learners. So we're going to start that now. So in order to use the bus for 2 runs, we would have to separate the start time of elementary schools and our middle school by a half hour. So we still need to work out those details. Drop off and pick up and traffic patterns. Rebecca Brown is our savior, and I'll be looking for her assistance in figuring this out, but I need the parents to be part of the conversations and solutions. The other question is, what happens to our little ones at Hadley, our kindergartners, whose siblings are over at Blaney? And I guess in my younger years as a teacher and my Pollyannish view of things, I would say, oh, those kindergarten teachers will take a field trip across the street and meet up with their siblings, and then the pickup will happen. I don't know that that's the best solution, and so I'm open to ideas. Staff parking, how it's going to impact the Blaney neighborhood and that whole neighborhood. We're coming up and tossing around some creative ideas to have the most minimal impact on that neighborhood, because we do recognize we are adding staff and we want to respect your neighborhood and your homes. And then coordinate a summer parent night for students going to Blaney and a visitation for the children. I think it's very important that they go over and they visit their classrooms and they see the layout of the building and where is gym going to be and where is the cafeteria going to be, and so we'd have to coordinate that. The district logistics are, and some of this has been talked about already, the teachers weeding out materials. In fact, we're already planning dumpsters again this spring in some of the buildings. I had a conversation with Stanley staff probably January, early February, and despite not knowing where the swing space was, having been an elementary teacher myself, I know we're pack rats and probably have things from the 70s that probably won't go to the new school. And so I encouraged them at the time to start really thinking about the materials that either we declare as surplus or that could be donated. And so that work has already started at Stanley School. Coordinating material and furniture storage, as well as the move-in date. I've never been so happy to get Andy's email that said, let's talk about furniture and moving. I'm like, oh, we have people helping us with this? Max and I were like, we thought we had to figure this out on our own. And then custodial coverage for the summer and beyond at Blaney. We have tech items to be moved, our Brevo system, that is our swipe card system at the doors, our phone system, and then the internet access points and switches. There's also going to be some interactive boards that go over there, so the technology is going to be what your children have experienced so far at Stanley. And then we have all kinds of activities to plan. We have, with family, students, and staff, the Historic Commission is going through on March 17th. We're going to do a design team walkthrough and community memory walks. I've had some people reach out to me and said, I went to Stanley when I was younger. Do you think you would open it up to the community? And absolutely, we would. Communications. This community forum is only the beginning. I cannot do this alone. I do not want to do it alone, nor does my leadership team. I do not have all the answers, and I recognize that. We want to have a Blaney Street neighborhood meeting when we have redefined or at least drafted a traffic plan. A monthly transition newsletter with updates to families across the board to all 3 elementary schools. I was trying to think, should it be bi-weekly, but I think that's a little too quick because things are happening at different rates, but definitely a transition newsletter. And a Stanley family transition meeting in May and in July. I'd like to do it Zoom or hybrid so that everybody could attend and really update you and answer questions and update you to the point that we're at. Ideas or other considerations? I know that people don't have a problem emailing me, but there's my address if you want to email me. But I really, really, really ask that you copy my executive assistant on all my emails because, as with everybody, there are days that I'm in full-blown meetings and she will put in front of my face the most important emails before I leave for the day. So I ask that you do that. And then I've received a couple of questions to date that I thought were really good. Knowing what we went through in the pandemic and our ventilation study and all of the mitigations we had to do, what is the condition of Blaney? I would say that, first of all, I'm going to tell you a little story. Probably in 2015, I had been a superintendent for a year. We went to Blaney to see if we could use the Blaney School as an evacuation site for the Hadley School. It was in no condition to do that at that time. Having seen it in the fall, the YMCA has made some major improvements to that building. And I would say that it's very comparable to our elementary schools right now. Our facilities department and the town are coordinating some more upgrades, but the amount of natural light that comes into those classroom spaces versus the Stanley School fogged windows that you can't see out of just already makes you happy when you walk into the space. And then the other question I received via email was, have we considered the number of transition for students? For example, our 4th graders will be transitioning to Blaney and then transitioning to the middle school. Well, I could also say our kindergartners would be going to Hadley, then transitioning to Blaney School, then transitioning to the new school. I'm going to be very honest with you. My priority was the Stanley community and finding an optimal learning environment. So transitions were on the list, but those were our major priorities as a district and our goals. And so I think that might be it. Am I turning it over to our MC?
All right, so I'm sure that some of your questions were answered, but you have a lot more. So what we're going to do is just open it up, and we'll stay here as long as you want. If you guys could use the microphones, like come down here and talk, just because that helps Mr. Roulette record it for all the other avenues that this is being broadcast on. And, you know, we're calling any members of the design team here to help answer those questions. And if you don't feel comfortable asking questions right now, we're going to put the presentations on both these boards at the end and hang around and show you anything you want to see, or talk about some of the school building committee members and design team will be in the hall afterwards too, that you can meet up with them too to talk at boards or address any concerns. And of course, you know, you have Mike's email now, and school building committee is just sbc@swampscott.org if you need to email the school building committee about anything. So let's just open it up. I'm excited. I just, every time I see that building, I get happy, and I feel the excitement, and I hope that it's building for people here as well. So please don't be shy, because I know you have questions. Or not. Come one, come all. Yeah, you guys just, yeah, that's great.
Hi, Maury Greenbaum, 47 Forest Ave Extension. So my questions focus primarily on the Forest Ave Extension. First one would be to you about any mitigation for the houses surrounding that area of blasting. What do the residents of those houses do in preparation for the possibility of damage?
Sure. So what we'll do, once we have a blasting contractor on board, the first thing that they'll do is have a plan submitted and reviewed by the design team to make sure it's within the specifications. Part of those specifications will require a pre-blast survey. So what happens with that is a letter is sent out to any abutter that's within 250 feet. 250 feet is the state minimum. We're actually looking to potentially expand that out even a little bit further than that. But anybody that's within 250 feet will get a letter from the blasting company asking to allow us to come to your house to do a pre-blast survey. You get a letter, and then about a week later you get a second letter, and then about a week later you get a third certified letter to make sure that everybody has a chance to take a look at it. We try and get out there, we do the pre-blast survey. As the blasting goes on, they do have seismographs along the property line. Not only will the contractor and the subcontractor be on there, Hill as the OPM will be there, and the fire department will have representatives there as well. If they exceed the 2 inches per second at the property line, work stops. Okay. That's been determined by the state that that's a safe level, so we're going to be working to keep it underneath that, and it's in the contractor's best interest to keep it below that, because when they stop, it doesn't help them. So it's us helping them help you, basically. So we feel very confident that we're going to get a contractor on board to do the blasting that not only knows how to blast, but knows this area and knows how to do the work. They start small, they work big. Right now, we showed you the 4 areas that we're looking at. We're probably going to be starting, recommending starting as far away from all the structures as we can, and kind of doing some small test blasts there, working up and making sure that we control it. As we're getting closer to a property line or something like that, they might have to get smaller again. If something were to happen, you reach out to me. You've got my contact there, but it'll be out again and again. We are going to have an individual on site every day whenever there's any work going on, not just blasting. If they're cutting trees, if they're putting steel up or concrete in the ground, we're going to have somebody there to watch it, and we're going to be oversight. So I feel confident that we're taking every step we can to make sure that we don't have any incidents. If we do have an incident, we will certainly address it. That pre-blast survey goes a long way to
So
showing that.
250 feet is the sort of point of no return. I mean, people beyond 250 feet, houses beyond 250 feet are not checked pre-blasting or looked by your group?
So the state requires at least to 250, so we're looking at how much more. We want to kind of see if we go a little bit further, does that get the other side of the street, say, or something like that. So we're looking to go a little bit longer than that, a little bit larger than that.
So there's some room for movement there, is what I'm hearing, maybe?
For the
Beyond 250 feet?
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
great. So that we can discuss at other forums. Okay, the second question for you, because you brought it up, was in the construction approach, you mentioned changes to Whitman Road and Forest Ave extension, which I was not aware of. So tell me about the Forest Ave extension changes that would need to be undertaken in preparation for discussion, for construction.
So I believe really the majority of the work that with the Forest Ave extension is just the physical connection to the site. We've got a driveway that's coming out to that, and it's just that physical connection out to that. It's not the entire road or anything like that.
So what I'm getting at is you're not going to be using our street as a transit for trucks and
No.
assorted other stuff coming in and out.
There is no intent to use
Yeah,
the
so
Forest
really
Ave
you're
extension
talking
during
about the
construction.
gate that's going to be there, that road that goes to the gate that's going to be there for emergency access and for buses theoretically.
That's correct, and during construction, we will not be
Okay,
using it.
so that's the work you're talking about. Okay, and I'm sorry I'm taking up all the questions, but we have, most of the residents of Forest Ave Extension do have concerns and questions about what changes are being planned to the street itself and also the traffic orientation at the intersection of Forest Ave, Humphrey, and Atlantic, which I know there's been a lot of work put into. How do we get involved in discussing this with the town as decisions are being made, or have decisions already been made about what's happening to Forest Ave Extension?
Yes, so we're in the process right now of designing the improvements that will happen at the end of Forest Ave Extension, where it meets Humphrey Street and Atlantic Street.
Right.
In terms of Forest Avenue Extension itself, there's going to be very minimal changes to that road. Like you mentioned, it's only going to be used for emergency access and for busing.
Okay.
So we will have a connection that will happen at the end of the road that will be gated so that people can't use it on a regular basis, that will connect into the school. And then some minimal improvements down at the intersection with Atlantic and Humphrey Street, where we need to widen it out a little bit so that the buses and emergency vehicles can actually make the maneuvers.
Okay, so there
But
will...
it's very, very minimal. It's really just changing the radii of that turn.
Is there a plan to remove the pillars that are present, or to change the pillars? In
There
some
is a
form of
plan
fashion?
to relocate the southerly pillar a little bit further south. So if you're out there and you see where the sidewalk ends,
Yes.
that pillar would essentially be pulled back to the edge of the sidewalk there.
Okay.
And then that
But will
curb
it be in
line
the
would
same
just
position?
transition back into
Same
the
position.
existing.
Okay, great.
Yep.
And the other question is, because this was all, the anxiety arose because in your submission to your big outline of items here, when you put your big packet together, there was discussion in there about widening the street, adding sidewalks. That's all off the board now?
Correct. When we had originally discussed potentially having that be an additional entrance into the school and exit out of the school for parents pickup and drop off traffic, we were looking at improvements like that so that people could still walk through there. People can walk along Forest Ave Extension to get into the school, but with the traffic volume that's on that road, it's very low. People can walk right along the edge of the street, and we're not proposing to do that type of widening.
You're not planning any changes whatsoever in the street design as it is now, the street itself?
No, other than for
Other
about
than
the
end,
last
the gate,
100 feet where we
getting
have to
into the
taper
gate.
out a little bit. Yep.
And that road won't, the road will only go up to where the gate is?
Correct.
Okay, that's great.
Yes.
And let's see, there was just one more for you. We have concerns about the safety of children. As it stands now, there's a lot of drop-off, parking and then drop-off of children on this fairly narrow street, which is relatively unsafe to traverse. Is there any attempt, or now that we're going to have 700 or 750 students, obviously parents will try to park there and it will be even busier than it is now and potentially more dangerous. Is there any way we can mitigate that?
Yes, so right now, parents are not allowed to come onto the school for pickup, so all of that pickup is happening out in the neighborhood. All that pickup and drop-off is happening out in the neighborhood. With the new school, we've actually designed the layout to bring all of that parent pickup and drop-off activity onto the campus itself, and it will happen in a rolling pattern. And right now, it's planned for staggered drop-off and pickup times for the upper and lower elementary school to be able to help get all those kids onto the campus. Obviously, one of the things that Pam talked about earlier was busing as an option. So there are also options to remove that staggered pickup and drop-off and have more buses to get all those parents on site. But the intent is, and the way that the site has been laid out and designed, is to get that parent pickup and drop-off activity out of the neighborhood and accommodate it all on site within a quick time period so that parents are discouraged from parking in the neighborhood.
I fully understand that, but you know it won't happen. So, so is there any
Yes.
way we can help it happen? Signage or?
Yes, so I'm not
whatever.
sure whether you've seen the plans, but there are some plans for improvements off-site that were mentioned as well.
Okay.
So right now, what happens during school pickup and drop-off times is there's an informal one-way traffic pattern that happens through the Orchard Road, Orchard Circle.
Right.
That will actually become formalized and become a real one-way pattern.
Okay.
What that will allow us to do is create designated travel lanes and designated parking lanes so that it's not just people parking all over the place and cars having to kind of zigzag around the parked vehicles.
I understand. I hate to say it again, but I'm really concerned about Forest Ave. I'm retired now. I'm a retired physician, and I can see what happens morning and afternoon in terms of really the potential danger to these children walking up and down there. Some of them, you know, a lot of the kids have their parents with them, and I suppose that makes it a little bit safer. But it is, we've sent people on the street have sent pictures of the police department showing the accumulation of people and traffic there. And of course, then there are the pedestrians trying to come through, and of course, everybody has an SUV. So I'm just asking for consideration that perhaps that should be thought about. The other side, I think, you know, those are long streets. You know, I'm sure there'll be parking going on there, but this is a dangerous situation. I just bring it up. I appreciate everything, and let me just say one final word. This is going to be great. I've had 3 children go through the Swampscott schools. I've had 2 grandchildren go through the Swampscott schools, and I'm very excited about this, and I really appreciate all the work that everybody's put in. So, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's John. I live on Atlantic Crossing. It's a relatively new neighborhood, 14 homes on the other side of Humphrey, opposite of Orchard. And I'm kind of new to the process here of checking in and following the plans on the schools. Is there any visual representation of the traffic flows available online? I didn't have any luck finding anything, but maybe I'm missing it.
So there aren't currently. It's all stuff that needs to get worked on. I mean, I think right now the focus is sort of on the construction management plan and getting the Stanley School down and getting the community comfortable with what's going to happen there. And there's certainly going to be discussions at a later time that will definitely focus on traffic.
Okay, Well, maybe this is a good opportunity now then, if we could get a visual representation from the traffic expert on what kind of traffic flows we're going to see during the construction phase of the trucks in and out, as well as the operational traffic of the school when it's in use. And my specific concerns for my neighborhood and the other communities on this side of the school, of Humphrey and our neighborhood in Atlantic Crossing, is that we do have students that are going to the middle school that walk on Nason Avenue. And there's a crossing guard on Humphrey. We have a lot of truck traffic now with the construction. And yeah, those are our concerns. And I haven't been able to find anything representing these traffic flows yet.
Your concerns are completely understandable, and they're shared by certainly this committee and the larger school building committee. As Mike alluded to, there will be a construction management plan, and it will describe how the trucks are moving about the site and about the town, and that's something that is required of the project. As for the operational traffic flow, that's a work in progress, and I think that Rebecca will be part of the discussion with school and police about how that traffic is going to work, because we will be formalizing some one-ways that the police will have to be involved in that kind of stuff, and we hope to have we sort of hope to have a school neighborhood traffic kind of panel to sort of, it might not be perfect when this first opens, right? And it's going to be things we're going to be, readjusting and adjusting. So there will be times to be involved in those kind of discussions, but there really are no traffic flow pattern plans yet. I mean, Rebecca did some initial stuff when we explored different sites, but I mean, they're not,
Well,
they're
I
not
understand,
happening.
I appreciate that everything's in the works, but you've already been talking about some mitigation options for surrounding streets. If we get a visual, representation of that on the pictures you have now, just something to point out, and we can,
Okay, we could
kind of
see.
feel better
we can
about
see.
this.
Not yet, no. Okay, so there is a traffic. So Rebecca's alluding to, we have to do permitting with different boards in town, and part of the package that goes to the planning board talks about traffic patterns. So that's the first report that's going to be available. But like I said, this is going to be a work in progress, and certainly there's going to be so many more discussions about it.
Okay, so are you saying that the planning board then is the venue for that traffic discussion?
I don't. Yeah, so the planning board's for on-site stuff. Do you want to speak to it? Because it's not.
Yeah, so that, the planning board meeting is really more related to the on-site stuff, some of like the stormwater management and wetlands impacts, things like that. But as part of that submission, we are required to provide a traffic impact and access study, which we had done. A huge portion of that had already been done for the feasibility phase for this. But we didn't have all the detailed traffic counts because of the pandemic, obviously stopped us from being able to get those. We have since gotten all that information, provided a full traffic study. I don't know whether the planning board has made that publicly available online, but certainly through the town it should be available.
Because the planning board has a traffic study in hand.
They do, yes.
Okay.
And that will show you the traffic flows, not just at the intersection of Atlantic Avenue where you were talking about, or it's Atlantic Crossing, I think is the name of it, yeah. But it has it around the entire area
Okay.
that you can see up on this map.
And does that traffic study project anything for the construction phase or for the operational use of the
It is
school?
just post-construction, so this would be kind of the permanent impact. So we haven't started looking at the construction period impacts yet. That will kind of get developed in the next coming months as the contractor is brought on board and we know how much material is going to be removed, how many trucks they'll need to do that. We'll start developing all of those plans as well.
Okay. As you get any more information or more details or more opportunities for input and discussion on this, it would be much appreciated.
Absolutely.
Seems a bit dark and fuzzy right now. We're not getting a lot of information on the traffic, so.
There's just, I mean, you're right, there's not, I totally understand. There's so much more to be done in the next 2 years, and this team is certainly going to have more community forums, and without a doubt, I'm sure more than one will be devoted to traffic, you know, construction and post-construction and opening of the school traffic.
And we're saying construction, we're talking about demolition starting this summer. It's already March. You're talking about, is there a date you have in mind for when we're going to start seeing trucks rolling up and down here?
So, yeah, early July.
Early July. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks. John?
Hi, Suzanne. Is this on? All right. So, John Jantis, I'm 61 Blaney Street. So, actually, can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. 61 Blaney, and I have probably more comments than questions just on this. They can't hear me.
You get closer to it.
All right. I have more comments than questions on the swing space. And I think just before I jump in, I did want to say that, you know, my wife who's here with me, you know, we support putting all the kids in one spot because that seems like it's the best option for them to keep them together, not separate them into pods and, you know, things like that. So, you know, we're very supportive of that. That being said, I was very encouraged by what I was hearing from the superintendent about some of the mitigation efforts. But that's really what I wanted to touch on. You know, my wife and I did talk to quite a number of neighbors on the street in the last few days just to kind of get their feedback, said we were going to come here and, you know, kind of represent, you know, the street with some of the concerns. But, you know, I think I'm going to take a page out of the superintendent's playbook and just tell a very quick story, which is, you know, we've been on the street for 12 years now. And with Hadley there, then with the Y coming, it's already over capacity with parking. There's really, by 8:30, there's no place to park in that entire neighborhood with the teachers, staff, you know, whatnot. There's absolutely no place to park. Getting in and out, you know, when the school drop-off happens and the school pickup, we have a really hard time getting out of our house. And, you know, we have kids in the, you know, we have a child in middle school, a child in the high school. So to get out and get to them with all this happening is already hard. And then with the swing space, it's going to be even harder. So, and other folks on the street have the same concerns. And I think historically, you know, some of the things that we've run into, our neighbors have run into, have been blocked driveways, you know, parents picking up park in front of our driveway, we can't get out, neighbors, same thing. We've had parents yell at us, threaten us over the years, just for asking them to move the car so we can get out of our driveway. And you know, it's unfortunate, but it has happened. More often than you might think. It was very surprising for us. So what we would like to suggest, and before I get to that, I would like to take the superintendent up on her offer to listen to the parents and be part of this process. And you know, thank you. I hate to say I'm going to volunteer for another thing, but I will volunteer to be the point of contact for Blaney, if you like, to you know, be messenger back and forth, or you know, if you have thoughts. But I think most importantly, echoing kind of some of the previous comments, we would like to be part of the process at the beginning. We don't want to hear about these things after the fact, then try to deal with it. We want to be constructively involved during the process. So when the doors open up, you know, we'll all. No secrets. I mean, I don't know if happy is the right word, but at least it'll be manageable. But I think some of the suggestions that we heard from the neighbors that, you know, I'd like to just mention here. You know, we did ask some of the neighbors to sign. I don't know if petition's the right word, but we asked them to sign off on some of these suggestions, which we'll be submitting to the school building committee and to the district, just again, so you have those. But if I can just take another moment and run through these quickly, and some of them you did touch on, Superintendent. One suggestion was that the drop-offs and pickups occur on Humphrey Street, if possible. That way, Blaney would be not be just overwhelmed between the two schools in the same neighborhood. Another suggestion, if possible, that the St. John's parking lot next to Anthony's be utilized for teacher parking. Again, just because the neighborhood's been overrun already, we're already at capacity, just something to consider if that's even a possibility. Another suggestion, which the superintendent touched on, was delayed openings or different opening times for the schools, just to mitigate traffic concerns. And especially with folks going back to the office, Humphrey Street, starting to fill up again. So again, managing that traffic becomes even more important. One suggestion that we thought was a terrific one was having a police officer permanently assigned during pickups and drop-offs. And I just want to differentiate between having a police officer there and a crossing guard there. I think the police officer being permanently assigned there for pickups and drop-offs made a lot of sense, because the police officer could tell people to move their cars, blocking driveways. Crossing guard doesn't really have that authority, but just to keep things moving, and it wouldn't be, for 10 years, it would be for the life of the swing space. So that seemed to make a lot of sense to almost everybody on the street, to have something like that in place. And again, just if other issues come up during this process, again, we want to be part of that conversation, from the beginning. So again, as this thing progresses, again, I heard safety of the kids mentioned by the gentleman on Forest Ave Extension, and that's what we want as well. We don't want any issues with child safety or anything like that. So I think that is it. So I will get that information over to the SBC and to the district, and look forward to continuing that conversation.
Thanks, John.
Thank you.
I mean, great suggestions, and everything's on the table. And like you said, it's 2 years, and I know Pam said everyone's going to feel the pain, and we're going to try to minimize that pain for everyone as well. So definitely good suggestions.
Hi, good evening. My name is Leah Pallone. I live at 69 Orchard Road. I have to say, we're thrilled about the new school. We voted yes. I know some of our neighbors were not in agreement on that. However, I do share a lot of the concerns of my neighbors. I'm hearing that you want us to participate in these decision-making, but I haven't quite heard how we actually participate. Some of my biggest concerns are also traffic. I have 2 young children, a dog. Kids are often out playing in the street, crossing Humphrey to the beach in the summertime. Obviously we're excited for this, but also have concerns with big construction vehicles. I'm also now hearing that our street's going to permanently become a one-way, which seems like new news to us. So obviously I could sit here and list off my concerns, but I would like to be active. So I'm wondering, how can we actually join you in these decisions? How can we share with you, as someone who lives across the street, how traffic flows? What are some of our concerns? We want to be active. We want to make this great for everyone, but safety is obviously a very big concern, as well as the integrity of our properties. So I'd love to have a little bit more of an active way to get involved. So I don't know if there's a sign up, there's a listserv, something like that we can actually start to get a little bit more involved versus being in the dark.
So we're going to be continuing to have these meetings, and as we're getting closer to construction, we're going to have more of them. But the other thing we do, we have regular school building committee meetings, and those are public meetings, and a lot of this information, and maybe even a little bit more detail than we've had here, is shared, and as the design is developed, it's always being updated and shown there. So that's a really good opportunity for people to come and visit those meetings, whether they've been on Zoom lately. So you can do it from your home and listen in, but really not just listen, but participate. We always have a section there where we have public comment and public input. And in addition to that, you have the emails here. This presentation is going to be made available, so you can get the email if you didn't write it down. But feel free to reach out to the school building committee email. Feel free to reach out to us, and get us that information.
Rebecca? Is there, like, when you do this for other communities, I know you've built schools and done traffic patterns, like, I'm saying we're going to have forums about traffic, and I know we will, but is the process for you to sort of like develop a plan or like an idea, and then we vet it with people, or we go through it and talk about, is that, like, when does that normally happen for a school?
That's been a little bit of an ongoing process all along. So through the feasibility phase, we got a lot of feedback through the SBC meetings from the community on kind of what their traffic concerns were. So we've heard a lot of those concerns, and many of them are the same ones that
Oh, sure, I know.
that have been brought up tonight, for sure.
But I just think now, like, where, like, it's hard for me to believe that with, you starting to do blasting in July, that you don't have a construction timeline in place. And I feel like as someone who lives, within 200 feet of where blasting is going to take place, that timeline is kind of pertinent to be sharing with the neighbors.
Yeah, and I can let Mike.
So we outlined at a very high level here tonight, but again, at that school building committee meeting, we have a detailed schedule that we review every month with that committee, and it's in the documents. It's a publicly available document, and you can look at the detailed breakdown on that.
Is there a way that is there like and maybe, forgive me for not knowing this, but is there like an email that gets sent out? As a parent, someone who works full time, it's very difficult for me to attend these meetings, even on Zoom.
So there's a couple things.
Running out the door at bedtime. I'm sure everyone else feels the same way.
So if you go to the school building committee website and push the button that says contact us, you'll get emails when we update information or when a meeting's happening or something's going on.
I get those.
All right.
Are you like sending out like timelines of those? Like, are you going to be sending like traffic pattern plans directly to those, or like maybe like a smaller? Maybe it makes sense to even start just like a smaller like a butter contact or something like that.
So that's what Mike mentioned before. Like, we're going to have these meetings, and they're not always going to be like this. They're going to be focused meetings, right? There's going to be traffic meetings, and we mentioned there's definitely going to be a butter meetings because some of those concerns are much different than maybe the whole community. When we picked this design team and our architects and our OPMs here for this project, we really thought about traffic from the get-go, because that was one of the things that was really problematic last time around. And so we made a commitment as a school building committee and as a town to look at traffic not only by the site we picked, but throughout the whole town, because like the gentleman from Atlantic Crossing, we understand that people are going to have to go from one side of town to the other side of town and back and everything. So we need to think holistically about how people move around the town, right? And these are discussions that Rebecca has spearheaded and been working on for a while, but they're just a work in progress, and there will be focused meetings. And I think, just like this was advertised, the abutters will certainly continue to get their monthly emails or letters saying when things are happening, and be apprised of it. I think that.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you reiterating that. I just, I think it's important that the conversation starts to get a little bit more, detailed and more complete, as we start to approach. July's only in a couple of months, right? And obviously, I have to echo, we're thrilled. We're very excited about this. We just want to make sure that we have the information so that all of a sudden one day I have someone digging up my sidewalk, or a truck blocking my driveway, or my child's running out on the road. This information is really important to us.
So we mentioned one of the slides I had talked about March and April kind of being key periods.
And I apologize, I came in a little bit late.
Sorry. So March and April are key periods for us to get to the town and get approvals and get an earthwork removal permit and stuff like that. And once we get those permits and once we get the feedback from the town, that's really going to feed into a lot of our information. So we don't want, we're going to get specific requirements from the town, and that might modify our plan. And at that point, that's when we can really start getting it out to the public,
Okay,
because
perfect.
now it's a plan that is in coordination with requirements from the local authorities having jurisdiction, which is the town and the fire department and the police department and everybody, and we're working with them, and then that's, so you're right, it's coming up soon, and it's just not right now, but it is going to be very soon.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. And I know this is
Yeah.
not easy to take all these questions, so I appreciate you hearing us out. Thank you. Hi, Katie Cirilli, former Stanley School student, mother of a first grader and an incoming kindergartner. And I was just wondering a few things about the swing space. I also went to CCD in the Blaney Street building, so I am familiar with that building as well. So where will the kids eat lunch?
There is a great space in the
In
basement.
the basement?
That, if
That
you're
open
familiar with it.
space, yep.
And we expect to be utilizing it not only as a gym space, even though the ceilings are lower, they're not tall, but with 9 classrooms, gym 2 times a week, that's going to give us enough time to space out before and after lunch that the custodians could set that up as a lunchroom.
Okay, and then, see, Jim was my other question. What about recess?
Recess, we haven't worked that out yet. That's one thing that wasn't on my list. I will add that to the list. I know
I didn't know
there's
if they'd walk to Hadley.
there was a little playground around it, but that's not,
It's-
it's not going to be sufficient depending on how we stagger it.
Right.
That's the original space that we thought of.
Right.
But, it's not like on the great weather days, do they go over and participate at Linscott Park? That's part of the conversation we're going to have.
And with the Stanley students, my son knows who the Stanley kindergarten teachers are, so are the Stanley teachers for kindergarten going to get the incoming Stanley kids, or is it
Yes,
the, okay.
they are.
Great.
We're keeping Stanley teachers and Stanley incoming
kindergarten.
kindergartens together.
Okay.
Yep.
And then just some other random questions. The new school building, are the bathrooms connected to the classrooms, or are they not?
Kindergarten classrooms have bathrooms.
Okay.
And we, keep in mind, we have 7 sections of a grade level in that new building, but we have 9 sections of kindergarten, and they do have bathrooms within the classrooms,
Okay.
which is an absolute necessity.
Yeah, that's why I asked. Then just thinking about the Blaney Street nightmare. Part of me is wondering if we could have, I know Anthony's sold, I think it's sold, but they have that huge, overpass, let's say. If parents could drop their kids off and you have a crossing guard cross the, just like a moving drop-off kind of, I don't know.
We are open to all ideas.
Okay.
Open
and-
to all ideas. If you could, I know we've exchanged emails and you've emailed me before. If you email me that idea, it can go in the folder and we can bring it up at future discussions.
Okay, great. And I had one other question, forgive me. Oh, the Blaney Street building, you're only using that building, not the other brick building?
Correct. It's one building,
Okay,
one entrance, yep.
okay. And then, I requested to have a Stanley School forum for when you were making the decision of where to go. And I still think there's still a need. There's so much on your plate that other Stanley parents have all these ideas, and, I don't want to volunteer myself, but I'm happy to help mitigate the questions and just have full transparency, because finding out from the priest that, this is where my kids are going, and I'm sorry I'm getting upset, but.
Can I explain that? I didn't know if somebody was going to bring that up because there is an explanation to that. Father Kelly has every right to talk about what's going to happen in his building. The lease was signed last week. The YMCA and I had a meeting on Friday to discuss what the appropriate timeline for communication was going to be. Out of respect for the YMCA, their early learning staff, they asked that I hold off until they have conversations with their staff on Monday. They wanted to have conversations with their staff. They wanted to send out a parent letter. They wanted to have a parent forum.
That makes sense.
They asked me to wait until Wednesday. And Saturday night at 7 o'clock, my phone blew up with snapshots of the parish bulletin that let the cat out of the bag. He has every right to do that. But if you don't think I was crushed We had an emergency meeting Sunday to say, I can't wait. We both have to go out with our communications
Right.
before noon on Monday.
Right.
So I apologize that you heard it that way, but I was as surprised as you were. And I think I wanted parents to know that was not the plan. I have staff that said to people, isn't that a class act from the superintendent that we hear out from our parish priest first? That was not the plan. We're partnering with the YMCA. I had to respect the way they wanted to handle their staff, and so that's the answer. And I apologize that it went out that way. I got it Saturday night too, so.
I understand all of that. I guess more of my point is that, you know, back in, when this vote passed in October, you know, we were right there, like, let's talk, like, I just wish there, you know, could have been like, we're thinking about Blaney Street, we're thinking about this, like.
Any indication of that could have hindered negotiations, and that is why we couldn't let anything out. There was negotiations up until the last point. The Archdiocese, the YMCA, everybody was collaborative, but it had to be mutually beneficial, and so any talk of any site was not allowed. And so I understand your frustration. It was frustrating for me to have an idea and not be able to share it, but I'm looking at the result and how great it is, and we're really excited.
I'm happy. I'm so happy Stanley's together. I'm happy my kindergarten will be 2 blocks, not 2 houses down from my second grader. I'm thrilled that they're all together. I'm glad they're not in trailers. I would have been fine if they're in trailers. I wanted the Stanley kids together. But I just, moving forward, like,
I'm going to take you up on your offer to be a point person.
I'd
I'll
love
be in
to.
touch Monday morning.
Perfect, because I want full transparency moving forward. I don't want anyone feeling
Let's
left
figure out how to keep in communication besides those moves, how to get your organizing the questions, trying to get answers while all of this is going on.
Great.
And I'm not joking. I will reach out to you. I know I have your email.
Yeah,
Thank you.
unfortunately, yes. Thank you.
That's so great.
Hello, my name's Lara Leiberg, and we have 3 toddlers, and our oldest is going into kindergarten, so we're going to be a big customer of all of this, and we're excited. It's a beautiful design. A question I had about the kindergarten is that, and I'm sorry that I don't know your name. I'm new. Okay. I know you mentioned that there's a flooding challenge in the Hadley kindergarten space. Is that?
It's seasonal,
Okay.
but it's not, I shouldn't say it's flooding all the time.
Okay.
I was a
wanted to
little
ask for a
dramatic
little
because
more.
I don't like it for kindergarten, and if you visited those classrooms during the pandemic, it was really sad. There are occasions, and seasonally, where they get water in the windows, and we talked a lot about today about having those 5 kindergarten classrooms together, the Hadley and the Stanley the kindergarten classrooms, and so moving services into those spaces because the kids wouldn't be in there all day. They'd be in and out for services. I just think at the time they were moved there, we had no space, but now we have an opportunity to shift things around. So services, meaning intervention services, literacy services, math tutoring, English language services. Then you've got kids coming in and out, but they were put there for a good reason, and then the water table was discovered, and it's not all the time. If we have a really tremendous rain sometimes they get water in there, it's just inconvenient. And so I don't want you to think Hadley's underwater. Maybe I misrepresented that.
He won't
And
be
the-
sailing, in school.
Well, but the kindergartners aren't
Bring
having
your
swimming lessons
floaties.
in there.
Okay.
But it's awful, it's inconvenient, and that's one of the reasons, for this project. So rest assured, your child won't have to wear their swimmies.
Okay.
And we're moving them. I think it's really important that if we're consolidating and we're making all grade levels together, that we start that philosophy and feeling with those 5 kindergarten teachers. So
Okay.
it'll be great.
Thank you very much.
And you have my email address.
Hi, my name's Gail Brook, and I live on the other side of the school where the traffic problems are just as bad as Forest Avenue Extension and Orchard Road, but I'll leave that for another day. My question is, since you have a timeline and you have the plans in place and you're talking about blasting and construction, that obviously you've come to an agreement with the Unitarian Universalist Church, and was that agreement, and how much money is the town going to pay the church to use the parking lot for an exit?
No blasting is happening on the Unitarian Church site at all, so that's not something that has to be
No,
set.
you obviously purchased the right-of-way for the exit from the school, and how much did you pay for it?
So the Unitarian Universalist property is still being discussed and mediated with the church.
So we don't have a plan for the exit to go through the church parking lot?
Yes, the exit will go through the church parking lot.
So
We
how
are
much
still-
did we pay for that?
We haven't paid a dime. We are still mediating that. So it will happen, and the plan is that it will go through there. It has not been resolved yet.
Okay, so the question I have is how much will it cost us, and what are they asking for, and when will we know?
So we're in mediations with the UU Church. So just like she talked about negotiations, we don't speak about those things publicly
Okay.
because they're just, it impacts negotiations, right,
I
to talk about
understand.
that.
Yep.
But certainly, Gail, it'll be public information without a doubt as soon as it's.
Well, I just wondered why, when you're talking about starting construction in July, obviously we have to have that agreement made before you can do the construction.
Yes, you are 100% correct.
So that's why I asked the
Yes,
question.
no, you're right. You're completely right, Gail.
Hi, I'm Martha Caesars, and I live on Nason Road. And I'm thrilled that our kids are going to have a wonderful new school. I still have concerns about what is going to happen. And my most immediate concern now is, will the community have access to the conservation land during construction?
Yes.
So we will be able to go in and use all the trails that are there?
Yes, you will.
There'll be no fence. I thought you mentioned a fence around?
The fence is going to be around the school site, so the walking path at the end of Forest Ave Extension will be outside the fence line, so we'll be,
So that path will not be impacted at all?
that's correct.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Megan, and I'm going to have an incoming student, kindergartner. So I just had some more questions about the kindergarten space at Hadley, because I think maybe I didn't understand.
I lit a match on that one. Go ahead.
No, I'm not worried about the flooding. I'm just confused about, are the two kindergarten classrooms that are usually at Stanley going to be in the basement now at Hadley? They're
No,
gonna
that's what,
be-
no kindergartens in the basement.
Okay, that's where the intervention space is going to
services
be.
will occur.
Okay.
We had a discussion with the elementary principals today, and Mrs. Beb checked and talked about it's really important that the five be together. And so we're shifting, not only at Hadley, but we're shifting things at Clark too, because it's a really good opportunity to shift some things around with additional services. So they will not, if I have anything to say, which I do, they will not be in the basement.
So I'm just wondering, how did that additional space become available? Like, where are the
Because
two?
library at Hadley, I call it a double wide.
Yeah,
It's basically two classrooms without a wall between it. And we've talked with facilities that a wall can go up in between it, and there's two classrooms already there. Because that's why library will be on a cart, art will be on a cart, and music will be on a cart.
okay, so the two kindergarten classrooms are going to go in the library at Hadley School?
Correct. That's
Got it.
currently the library.
Thank you.
Anybody else with a kindergartner that I?
Question for you. Sorry. Hi, Allison Stewart. I have 3 kids. One's at Stanley now. One will be at Stanley in a year, 2 years, so in the transition. Question about the services. So you had mentioned some of the space at the Blaney Street, and then services in Hadley being in the basement. So services for the Blaney School kids, is there space for that, or will they have to go to Hadley?
No, we're creating, some of the limitations in how many classrooms we could put there were because we're creating services there. So
Okay.
if your child receives speech, they're not crossing to Hadley to get speech. The
They will
service is
have them
there.
in Blaney. Okay, great.
So yes, we have services within Blaney. Nobody's crossing the street in the middle of the day. And the other thing is, not all services at Hadley will be in the basement. I just think
Right.
with kids coming and going and being there for a half hour, 40 minutes, it's a much better use of that space.
Yeah, great. And I will happily sign my kids up for a bus if we do that, because I don't want to create traffic in your neighborhood. That frightens me, trying to get kids to school. So.
Anybody else? Taking anybody else?
Yeah, I just have a quick question about, for you, about the well, actually, it might be more of a design question. I have I have a niece and a nephew, and then a son and a daughter that will all be in the elementary schools. And just like one of them is hearing impaired. Are you guys going to have those services at the school with the microphones and things like that?
We have portable adaptive equipment that currently, they're portable within the district right now, so whether there's somebody at middle school or high school or elementary, they move to where the need is, and so that equipment is available.
Okay, so in the new elementary school, will it be, I know like when we speak with the audiologist, that there's like...
We're not going to have mobile units anymore.
Okay,
Yep.
It's going to be permanent? Like
Yes.
Permanent, okay.
Yes.
Thanks.
Great.
This is great, you guys. I mean, keep asking questions because it's really helpful.
Hi, I'm John. I'm back. I'm from Atlantic Crossing. And I didn't say it before, but I am thrilled with the whole project. Very supportive of it. I'm glad that we're getting these improvements in town. The kids really need it. Seeing the condition of Stanley, where my kids have gone through. But again, I feel like I'm missing on some of this with the traffic, where some of these things have already been thought through to some degree. And I'm not looking for a traffic study with numbers or anything, but just a real simple arrow, or if you can just point on the pictures of the entrance to the property, or where the traffic's going to be coming off the property. You talked about Forest Avenue becoming a one-way. Just simple things, whatever thoughts you have on that. If we can just point that out so we can see it.
Right here.
Yeah, we can change it to the neighborhood one, and I'll explain on there. Yeah. So on this here, if you're looking at it, so here's Whitman Road, and Orchard Road is up to the north here. The site coming down over here, here's Forest Avenue Extension. That path through the Ewing Woods is right down here. And then right off to the side is the Unitarian Church. So all of the site traffic will come in from Whitman Road and then come down to the front of the building and then split in half depending on where they want to go. For the lower school, the drop-off area will be in here, and parents who have kids in the lower school can drop off their upper school students in that same area and then head out. That traffic will come out through the UU Church and out onto Forest Avenue at the intersection of Forest and Laurel. And then anyone who is headed out to the upper school can take that left-hand turn, drop off their kids in that area, and then they'll circulate back around the teacher parking and back out onto Whitman Road. And that helps to disperse the traffic in the neighborhood a little bit more so that people aren't all coming in and out in one intersection through there. Buses will come around the side of the building and will do their pickup and drop-off activities over on the easterly side of the building, and then go out through Forest Avenue Extension. And that will be the only traffic that will be allowed to go out Forest Avenue Extension, other than if a fire truck or something needed to get in, and particularly during pickup and drop-off time. The majority of the time, if a fire truck needed to get in, they would come in through the front of the building, but when parent traffic is on site, that will be their quickest way in. If we want to go to the one that has the neighborhood context, yeah, that big aerial, that's probably the easiest one for talking about what the traffic flow looks like in the neighborhood. Yep, that one works perfect. So the only road that's actually becoming permanently one-way is just Orchard Road itself. So right now there's the one-way flow that has people entering in through Orchard Circle and then exiting out through Orchard Road. So Orchard Road between Nason Road and coming down through the Orchard Circle and out to Humphrey Street would become a one-way roadway. And this would allow us to create a parking lane. Yep, just Orchard Road from Nason Road down through to Humphrey Street. So Orchard Circle would still remain two-way. Early on in the process, actually, that was something that we talked about going through the initial. So it was talked about at the feasibility study meetings that were held for the school board committee. And I believe it was also talked about during the schematic design process as well for that. And that design is still being worked on. That's currently what is proposed to be able to make the traffic flow work, to be able to keep traffic moving through the neighborhood so that we don't have congestion that would occur here at the Nason Road, Orchard Road intersection. It's also being proposed, so if you walk out there right now, there's a pretty decent sidewalk out there, but the problem is there are trees in the middle of the sidewalk, so it's not an accessible route for people to walk. So we were looking at how can we make that accessible, but also keep the trees, because people didn't want to lose those trees. So one of the ways that we're able to do that is by making it a one-way and bumping the sidewalk in to what's currently the paved surface of the roadway, so that we can make those sidewalks wider, make them accessible. The road becomes a little bit narrower, but now it's a one-way road, and it still is able to accommodate on-street parking, bicycle access, and the vehicular access as well. Absolutely.
Sorry, sorry, she was, I can repeat for you.
Yeah.
She was requesting to be informed
I'm
prior.
just asking, like, I see some of my neighbors here. This is the first time that I'm actually sitting here having someone telling me my street's going to become a one-way, which, if it's safe, it's making everything better, fantastic, I'm all for that. But all I have to reiterate again is that I can't attend every single meeting. I can't sift through documentation. As someone who's going to be living so close to school, I just ask that we figure out a better way to make sure that this type of information gets communicated to people that are going to be greatly affected by this. It's our property, we own it. It's our neighborhood, we chose to live here. All for the school, I'm just asking that you find a better way to communicate with the neighborhood.
I hear what you're saying, and that has been a challenge. It has been a challenge for us, and
An email list.
so I think that that's a great idea, and I think that you will hear from us more. And like I said, traffic is still ongoing discussions. Like, nothing has been finalized. We are not in construction development yet, so we're still working on things. So I think that I get traffic. I mean, that's why when Lee showed that slide, that traffic was a pretty big bubble, because we know we live in a tight town, and we know traffic and parking are constant issues for all residents and in all neighborhoods. So we will definitely be devoting more time to traffic. It's hard to answer a lot of questions right now because we still are designing, and the school still has 2.5 years before it opens. But it's in the works, and I appreciate the questions. I totally hear it.
Thank you. There are some great visuals of the new school and everything, and I don't have a lot of time to spend searching the whole internet, but I was having trouble finding any pictures with any flow arrows just on the site, the direction of cars coming into the property and circling, going out different ways. That was very helpful, and I hope we can get just a real simple arrow added onto some of the pictures that you have.
So I am completely happy to go through the presentations and show you the stuff she has. I mean, it'd be easy for me to find it for you and show you the stuff and just give it to you. It's totally fine, but just so you know, it's still being worked on. So
I understand.
But
I totally get it.
so are you on the contact? Are you on the email list from the?
I believe so, yeah.
All right, can you just make sure you get
And
his name?
I totally get everything's in the works. I am a little nervous that we're a couple months away from demolition starting, and that if there's a route you have in mind for the trucks, that would be good information that we can start thinking about. Maybe not a finalized plan, but also in the same way, if there's any areas of intersections or sidewalk improvements, things that are options that we can think about as residents in the neighborhood, that, oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense, maybe we should advocate for that. Things we can anticipate coming up in some of these meetings where we can, be present and plan for. So,
Yeah, I mean, yes.
Thank you.
Yes, you're 100% correct. Yes, it's coming.
Hi, I'm Christina Bogardus. I'm 11 Orchard Circle, have a first grader at Stanley, and wanted to bring up a little more questions about the busing, because I think a lot of us, and this to alleviate some from Blaney too, busing going to the swing. I mean, there's been thrown out this 2 mile for busing. Is that like something that's determined? And we're like 1.6 miles, so I know a lot of that Stanley neighborhood would be interested in busing, because we used Blaney Street for the Y when we did the Zoom pods, and we were taking carloads of like 5 children from the Nason Orchard Circle, and it was just hectic then, so.
2 is the guideline we're using at this time.
Yeah.
And that is the mandate. And I guess that's all I'll say on it now. There will be a lot more to discuss.
Okay.
And so, but that is what we're using as a gauge, because we have 1 bus, and that bus
Yeah.
has to do the middle school as well.
Okay.
So that's what we're using right now
So we're sticking with what we have, kind of, and not expanding
at
for.
this time.
Okay.
Right.
Yep. Okay, so,
And there
but
are
we're kind of
only
sticking with what we have, we're not expanding
We're
on
not
any of the busing?
expanding at this time.
Okay, all right, that was my question.
Okay, thank you.
I would encourage us to, though, maybe if we could, because I know a lot of people would be interested in it, so. Yep.
I think this is great, you guys, and like I said at the beginning, there will be more forums for sure, and you will see emails and community information going out, and we will try very hard to do even more than we're doing right now. I'm sorry, John, one more question?
I'm sorry, I thought of one more, actually, for Scott Wright. How long is the blasting anticipated to go on for, from what date to what date do you think?
So the initial thought is that it's going to be basically over the summertime period, that July, August period. But the rock kind of defines the duration. If the rock is harder, it actually breaks apart a little bit easier. If it's softer or if it's broken up, it absorbs the blast a little bit and it doesn't break up as much. So they've got to go out there, and one of the first things that they're going to do is they're going to start doing some small tests, and they can kind of judge it. And you know what? They might think that they know the rock, and then they go 200 feet that way and the rock changes. So it's a organic process that they have to go through, and it's really going to be defined by the rock itself. But right now, we're reasonably confident based off of knowing the geology around this area and knowing other projects and talking with people about that it's probably that 2 to 3 month period. We think it can be a little bit shorter than that, but no longer than that summertime period.
All right, so thank you guys all for coming, and people who are watching this on TV, thank you. There will be plenty more opportunities for forums like this, and certainly email Superintendent, Mike, School Building Committee with concerns, comments, ideas, all that stuff. And I appreciate this, and I want to thank the design team and all the other contractors and professionals that are here tonight to help us. So thank you guys, and thank you. And if you guys have more questions, come down here. I'm happy to look at these presentations with anyone or what's out in the hall. Good night.